Know thyself. Know how we work on the inside. So today it's an inside job. An inside job. Understanding the soul of an individual. Beginning with the emotive attributes that are divided into 7 general categories. 7 attributes. And where are they derived from? Well, the 7 divine attributes of God. As we learned, God blew into us a piece of Him that's in our neshama, in our soul, and that becomes now the root of the attributes of the soul. So we begin with the first one, which is chesed. Chesed, loving kindness, which is metaphorically the right hand, the strong hand. It is giving without any without being discriminate. Whether you deserve or don't deserve, you give. That's what the loving kindness is. And therefore it's without limit. Then you have the attribute of gevura. Gevura means a stern limitation, a contraction, holding back. Whether you hold back partially or hold back entirely, that's the left hand, and hence the weaker hand. Like the mother who holds back the desire of the child to have ice cream before dinner. Holding back. Now, holding back after dinner you can have it, but not before dinner. Or sometimes holding back entirely even on something. Then we have the third attribute, which is the torso of the body, which connects right and left, sort of mediates between chesed and gevura, and that's called rachamim, compassion. Compassion means that the person is you don't have compassion over a rich person and to give them. You give on someone who's down and out. In other words, there is a recognition of a boundary here. Whereas kindness, there is no boundary. There is just giving. So you give to the wealthy person who doesn't need, and to the poor who does need. Because it's about your giving. It's not about the individual. And whether they need or don't need. Right. It's like when you're hosting in your home somebody, whether they're wealthy or not wealthy, whether they're full or hungry, you just give indiscriminately. You give, open hand, whatever a person takes, it takes, don't take. But in your act of hosting, of chesed, of loving kindness, you're not discriminating. That's that quality. Compassion, on the other hand, is a mixture of being, as there's a discrimination here. And that doesn't sound PC, that word, but it is. What are you being discriminate about? Is that there's a kind of judgment here that this person's down out and doesn't have. There's an awareness of that. That they're lacking. And you only give compassionately to the one that's lacking. Not to the one, right, that has, because they don't need compassion. Your loving kindness they can get, but not your compassion. So there is something discriminating here, right? An awareness that you are giving to the one who is specifically lacking. So you're aware of that, and that's part of something you take into play. And at the same time, you're giving them. So it's a mixture of the two things. And that's in the jargon of Kabbalah, it's called Tiferes, which means beauty. As beauty is, to the eye of the beholder, is when you have a symmetry of two or more colors that come together. As opposed to one color, you don't call it beautiful. But when you have two colors or more that come together, and they are, again, symmetrical, and they can bring out a beauty. So here, in Rachamim, in compassion, there's two things coming together, Chesed and Gvura, a restraint, a judgment, and the act of giving. The two things are coming together. Now, all of those three, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, kindness, without limitation, without being discriminating, Gvura being discriminating, holding back, therefore, and Tiferes, beauty, compassion, they are three passionate qualities of the individual. So two of them are the hands, and we speak with our hands when we're passionate. Chesed and Gvura, as they exemplify, and the torso is, at least with your hands you speak, right? The point being, passion means your passion. It's within you. It's the emotion as it is within you. It's expressive, but within you, it's of you. As opposed to being now bringing it down to being more deliberate about how you engage the recipient, how they will absorb this. So your passion is really not so much about them and how they absorb it, how they take it. So now we need to bring it down. And so from the higher element of the person, right, torso and up, more the emotive attributes, again, of passion. Now we bring to the right and left leg, which are Netzach and Hoid. We bring it down in a more grounding manner, and grounding means here to being more deliberate based on the needs of the recipient, right? Based on so the Alter Rebbe in this 15th letter, which is a very important letter for us to appreciate, to come to appreciate the inner workings of our soul. So he gives it by way of a metaphor on how a parent to a child, or a father to a son, however it's a metaphor, wishes to convey a teachings of an intellectual subject, that it should be absorbed by the child. So when it's coming from Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes, it's more about the individual's emotional passion and desire, and it's not engaging, not grounding yet things in order that it should be absorbed by the recipient. Again, bringing it into Netzach and Hoid, the right and left feet, brings it down in a more deliberate way that the recipient, in this instance the child, should be able to absorb the teachings. So the first thing is to in this grounding, is that the lofty ideal and teachings that the parent wants to give to the child needs to be brought down to their level. It might be a very abstract, spiritual idea that's a very important idea, but it needs to be brought down. So by way of metaphor, right? By way of metaphor, the sperm that is produced by the man begins in the mind, and there it's very abstract and subtle, and it needs then to be brought down in the kidneys that advise, and through two testicles that create and prepare the spermatoza that becomes now physical. In other words, when you're teaching an abstract, lofty, spiritual idea, let's say, and there's great subtleties there, to someone who cannot pick up on the subtleties, that won't be able to absorb it, you needed to bring it down in a way that they will be able to absorb it. So that's analogous again to the seminal drop that descends from the brain, where it's more subtle there, more tenuous, and through the kidneys and two testicles it becomes concretized, incorporeal into actual spermatoza. Right? So that is the first thing about the two legs, right and left leg, right leg being Netzach and left being Hod, which we'll get into more about the specifics there, is to take an idea and concretize it, make it real for the recipient. Second thing is, metaphorically, that you need to grind it into, from being a large piece, you grind it in the millstone into granules, right? And that's what you do for a child, in order that they should be able to absorb food, to grind it, to make into granules that they're capable of taking in and absorbing. So likewise, the teacher, the father, the parent, who is giving something to their child or their student, needs to taper the insight in the intellectual subject in order to divide it into many granules, so it'll be able to be taken piece by piece, instead of too much at once, too much information, that it will be, overpowering the mind of the student or the child. So those are the two basic qualities of the grounding of, again, for the sake of a metaphor, the parent or the teacher wants to give over some important teachings that might be a little abstract to the student or the child, right? Is concretize it, make it something that is, that is in their world of understanding, and give it piecemeal. So now we go to Netzach. Netzach specifically, we spoke about both of them in general terms. Netzach comes from victory. Victory meaning you prevail. Right? What's a victory? You have an obstacle and you overcome the obstacle and you prevail. So that's what the idea is in Netzach. The right leg. You need a strong right leg in order to prevail over the obstacles. So with the metaphor of the parent or the teacher giving something to the child or to the child, is there can be obstacles that prevent from teaching the child. They might be obstacles from within or from without. Meaning, from within, well, that may be the child isn't listening so well. Maybe they're not so, you feel that they're not so capable. They're not ready for this yet. And that holds you back. Unless you engage with Netzach and overcome that. So those are the feelings you have on the inside, and it can be based on things that they're doing. And therefore so you need to endure the battle and fight those obstacles that are holding back from giving. Whereas Chesed, Netzach is the right leg, which goes together with the right arm. So the right arm is kindness, giving. Kindness of giving is indiscriminately giving just because, you want to give, period. You want to give. It's your birthday today, and you just want to effusively engage and connect with everybody and just give, right? Netzach, the right leg, is grounding that idea, meaning it's bringing it down and incorporating the reality on the ground, as the foot is on the ground. The right foot is on the strong right foot on the ground. And what's on the ground? Well, I want to give over something to this child, but this child, I don't know if they're capable. I don't know if they're even interested. Don't seem to me. So those are obstacles that we need to prevail in order to give over the information. Now, whether we're giving this as a metaphor, so whether you should give it over or not give it over is not what's relevant. What's relevant is the quality of the soul that we engage, right? Whether, that's not, the point isn't here, oh, maybe the child isn't ready, maybe you shouldn't give it. Oh, yeah, but that's not the point. The point is we want to bring out through the metaphor, the quality, right? So that is Netzach, prevailing, overcoming, right? Because your feet are on the ground now, and the facts on the ground are, it's a challenge over here. How am I going to give? How am I going to prevail in my giving to this child when this child is maybe not so capable or not so willing? So we need to now incorporate. It's not enough chesed. Your loving kindness to give is not sufficient, because you'll fly over the child with what you're giving. And it won't be absorbed because it's not grounded in the reality of where that child's coming from and where I'm coming from within, that I overcome the obstacles. And Netzach, be victorious, enduring in my giving. Now, at this point in the manuscript from the Alter Rebbe, this 15th letter that we're learning, is missing Hoid. Hoid is missing. Hoid is translated as acknowledgement, thanksgiving, humility. Acknowledgement, thanksgiving is a sense of humility. So it's absent over here. That's the left leg. It's the left leg. It's humility is, and it doesn't say here, so I'm just briefly, just to give the concept, is the groundingness of being aware of the child that you want to give over something, acknowledging and being aware of their limitations, and yet it's more about their limitations that you acknowledge. Netzach is more about the obstacles that I have. It's more about me. Humility is more about the other. Even though both are about the other, but one is about how it reflects in me and how I have to overcome, be victorious, triumphant. Yeah, Netzach is being triumphant. It's a good word, probably. And humility is more about sensing the otherness, and that's what humility is. Okay, but again, the Alter Rebbe doesn't speak about that. Then he goes into the sixth attribute, which is Yesoid. Yesoid, again, using the example of the father who wants to teach his son. Or again, a teacher wants to teach a student, right? So, teaching with a passion, loving kindness. That's great. But the loving kindness is about me and my feelings. And my feelings that will, incorporate you. But and as a result, I might just get up there and say words of inspiration and that are wonderful, but it's like incorporating everybody. And even the person who listens from behind and doesn't see me speak with a passion, and the passion is about my passion. But now is Yesod. Yesod means foundation. And metaphorically, of the body, it is the reproductive organ. Male reproductive organ for the metaphor. Which, foundation means connection. It's about connection. When I feel, the loving kindness or do an act kindness that's motivated by love indiscriminately, that doesn't mean I am grounding it and bringing it to you and connecting to you specifically. Yesod means that the father is teaching, but he can speak words and someone behind the son who's behind him can hear the words and be inspired. Feel the passion, but not the connection. When do you feel the connection? When you eye to eye, right? Because the eyes are the window to the soul. So when I speak into your eyes, right? What am I doing? I'm connecting with you. I am in that act connecting. What happens when you connect with another person and give them over something? Of course, the person who's receiving is receiving it much differently when there is eye contact made. The bond is established than when eye contact and bond isn't established. It's the same information, but it's not absorbed the same way. Not only is it not absorbed the same way by the recipient, but the giver of the information gives it much differently to that person when eye contact is made. When I make eye contact with another person, that's why when we're on Zoom and people aren't on, not so great. They just have there's no eye contact being made, which means there's no real connection that's being made. And because there's no real connection, it doesn't inspire the teacher to give the same way. Through that connection, greater desire to give is made, and that's why it's the male reproductive organ. Then the sperm is, because when you bond, when you have a desire for another person in a physical sense, right? that bond, when you create that contact in a bond, creates then even greater sperm in the individual, because there's a greater desire and delight that you have in that connection. So the same thing in the metaphor, when there is the eye-to-eye contact that the son is looking in the father's eyes and connecting, so that it creates in the father a greater desire and delight to give more of himself through the teachings. And of course, the son is absorbing so much more because of that bond and that connection. Beautiful. So those are the emotive attributes. They're external. The internal aspect of them is simply love and fear. Love brings us to give. Fear brings us to hold back. Love, because of love, I'm giving without a discriminating, in an indiscriminate manner, or because of love, an enduring love that things won't hold back in my giving. Right? That's chesed and netzach. And then we have gvura, holding back, and hod is also through humility, really sensing the other person and what their needs are, and to be very discriminating and very careful in what you're giving them. And then you have the middle ground, rachamim, compassion, beauty, combining the two, and also middle ground is yisoid, foundation, connection. And connection also then is sort of like brings the two netzach and hod together. Those, the emotions, the basic emotions, because love is the inner dimension that brings to chesed and gvura. Yira, fear, are the two dimensions that bring to gvura, to restrain, and hod, to have a humility, acknowledgement of the other. And where does this all come from? These emotions. They are a product of our intellect. Chabad, Chachma Bina V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And as we know, our emotions are in proportion to our intelligence. As a child, gets angry over simple little things, an adult, hopefully it's a little more developed, because their intelligence has developed. Right? According to the person's intelligence, he should be praised, because that will be the extent of a kind of love and kindness that will come out of one's intelligence. And in intelligence, the most important element of it is das. Das is knowledge, we translate. It really means how the mind connects with the emotions. How the mind, when it knows something, it should feed you emotionally. So when you know how good Tanya is, you should have a feeling towards Tanya. When you know how bad doing the wrong thing is, when you have a keen awareness and knowledge of it, then that will help you to stay away from things that are no good. Das, to, yeah. All right. A lot there. Okay, any questions, any comments? Was this like Rashi when he explained the Torah for the children to understand and learn? I'm not certain of what the question is, Denise. Vida. Where you explain Torah to children to understand and learn. Explain to me what your question is. When one sins, does one affect the hands or the feet? Excuse me. My apologies. When you sin, you affect yourself. Yourself includes hands and feet. So could it be affect itself in a physical way? It's possible. Mordechai has a question. What is the blend of the lowest two emotions? When you acknowledge and when you have the humility to acknowledge the other person and to recognize that they have limitations, right? You acknowledge it, and you have humility in recognizing their limitations. You will be able to endure and overcome the obstacles. That's the connection. That's the blend between them. Why would you do that? Because you're really connected with them, which is Yesod, the middle one. So Yesod right, the middle being that you are bound, there's a bonding. The bonding will produce a humility to see the challenges of that child. The challenges of that child, the difficulties they're going through, that then will lead to the strong right foot, that you will be able to overcome the obstacles to help that child. Yeah, and all that begins. Yeah, that brings it all together. Very good, thank you for that, Mordechai. Okay, I don't see any other questions here. Hope that was clear. Beautiful. We will continue our conversation on this. We're not over. More to come. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zirchen Kadesh, Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing, great day.